Okay, well, I never did really get a chance to go over just kind of the basic features of the radio when I unboxed it, so I'm going to do that, just kind of go over the basic features and just kind of a real quick recap on the intro of it here. Again, this is the SuperStar SS158 VDX. It is a 10, 11, and 12 meter. It comes as a 10 meter only, but it's 10, 11, 12 meter AM, FM, CW, upper and lower sideband. Our inner knob here is our off button and our volume. Our outer knob here is the squelch. The inner knob here is our mic gain, and the outer knob is the RF gain. The inner knob here is our talkback on off and volume switch. The outer knob is the RF power knob. You got your variable power there. This knob here is your channel frequency pool, or your band, which is some radios, they are numbered, some are lettered. These are lettered on here, and then of course the corresponding letters depend on whether or not it is on high or low, which is controlled by that switch there. So your band selector there. This is your mode selector: CW, FM, AM, upper sideband, lower sideband. And then you got your fine and coarse clarifier tune here. And then your channel selector here. And if you're one of those people that kind of prefers the older style channel selectors instead of the newer encoders, that's what this is, the older style channel selector. And then up here for our buttons, you've got your high, which is your high and low for your frequency, which ties into your band selector button here. You've got your noise breaker A and L switch there. You've got your Roger beep switch there. You've got your echo on and off switch there. You've got your SWR switch there, which basically you don't have to do the thing where you dial it in or any of that. You just push this in, key it, and it gives you your SWR on the meter here. And then you've got your I already go over this noise blanker A and L switch here, your SWR switch here, your Roger beep switch here, and then this is your 10kz switch there. So there you go. And then this here is your dimmer. I have that unhooked right now, and I'll get into that. The way this thing is set up is it's bright, and then as it gets its dimmer, it dims down, but I found it too bright just most of the time, so there's a thing in there that you can unplug that kind of unhooks that, and it kind of keeps it on the dim mode, which is where I like it, and it's also a lot easier for trying to film it too. So anyways, so that's what's going on there. Side mic, 4-pin, Cobra unit end style, LED light in here. When you key it up, it turns red. Back here, you've got your heat sink here, your antenna jack there, your power jack there, which is a standard style, 148 CB style jack there for your power. And then you've got your external speaker jack here. And then this jack here is labeled PA and CW. It's just the CW. Some of these radios have PA, some of them have CW. The PA is already stamped in there on the radio, so it's just double stamped. This radio just has the CW feature on it. So, and that's pretty much all that's going on back here. You do have a bit of a legend or a frequency chart on this decal on the top here. And there you go. So, like I said, I'm going to flip this thing over and pop off the cover and kind of show you around a little bit more inside. So, stick with me. Okay, so before I get started here, I just want to say the one thing, well, there's a couple things probably, but the one thing that you absolutely have to have before you consider doing anything like this inside of your radio is you have to have the proper set of tools. You have to have these porcelain or ceramic, I guess maybe they are, tip screwdrivers here. You can get these, I believe, at Harbor Freight or wherever online. They come in like, you can get one, I'm sure, but they come in a set of like 10 or whatever. Some of them are Phillips, some of them are flathead, and they come with some different shapes on the heads. You're going to need some of these, or you're at least going to need one of these things that's got like a flat head, slotted on here, and then, something, can't remember, I think this had like a square or something on the end here. And then these right here for some of the cans inside, for adjusting your receive alignment and some of that. You're really going to need some of these here. These are called trimmer tools, and you can probably see the number on there. But if you just look on eBay for radio or TV repair tools, you'll see these a lot of times sold with these here for around 20 bucks. But you absolutely need these tools here, because if you don't, you're really going to dick it up in there. And you have to have a plastic or these anyways, because some of the stuff inside these radios is such that if you touch them with a metal screwdriver, it'll throw your readings off, because they're just not, got to use something that's non-conductive. So as I said before, first thing, make sure you have the right set of tools. And the second thing is, if you're a real klutz, or you just, are not the most mechanically adept person in the world, or you cannot work on a radio with the power off. It's one of those things, you have to have the power on, you have to have it plugged in, you have to have it on to be able to work on it. So this isn't like a lot of things or appliances where you're going to be able to turn it off and work on it. These radios, are pretty safe to work on, generally speaking. You start getting into older tube radios that are bigger radios that have the tubes and glass tubes and stuff in there. Be careful, because those things have very high power capacitors and some other stuff in there. Those things can kill you if you get your finger in there wrong. These, probably not so likely, but I certainly wouldn't recommend you, not knowing what you're doing, because electricity is electricity, and if you don't screw yourself up on this part right here, your power supply and everything else is still plugged into a wall, so. Again, if you're a complete klutz or you're not comfortable working with this kind of stuff, don't. So, with that, I'm going to grab a couple more things here, and I finally got my speaker thing. Like I said in the other video, they Loctited this, and so it wouldn't come off. Ordinarily, you just give these a little bit of a tug and they come right off, but they'd Loctited this on there, and it wasn't going anywhere, so. If yours is Loctited, how I got mine off is I took a pair of these hemostats here, and I just basically put it on the plug here, down here, and I kind of started rocking it back and forth, and then I took a little porcelain screwdriver, or maybe it was one of these here, probably both, and kind of pushed down and held down on the part that's soldered to the board, so that I wouldn't be putting undue stress on pulling it up. And after working it around for a minute and kind of taking and trying to scrape some of the Loctite that was on here off there, it finally came off of there. So I wouldn't be surprised if yours is Loctited too, because they go around and there's just certain points they Loctite on there, and that was done. And maybe they're not supposed to do that, but it wouldn't surprise me if they're all that way. So anyway. Alright, so things that absolutely needed to be adjusted on this radio. This right here. These two little pots here control your echo. Since this does not have an external echo control where you control the length or the volume of the echo delay, it just has the button that you turn the echo on and off. And that's kind of cool, but this thing comes from the factory with the echo completely jacked. They're like cranked all the way up, and it's just full on echo. You can't even, So, you want to turn these all the way counterclockwise is pretty much off. That's like all your effects down. And then you want to slowly work them counterclockwise, you know, until you get your desired length and time for your echo. And then again, you just turn the echo on and off on this switch up here. So that's the first thing that, you know, was really out of whack and needed to be adjusted. The second thing that needed to be adjusted that I noticed was the frequency. It was receiving okay, but when I would transmit, it was about 2 kZs off. And I know this because I was using my other radio, the Washington here, as a test radio to check the frequency for this one on. And I'll get to that in a minute here. So first thing was the echo here. And then of course I already went over the jumpers to convert it. Your J28s back here and your J29s right here. And those are the only 2 jumpers you need to move to convert it. You don't have to take the bottom side off and lift or snip a resistor or anything. Of course I already have a video on that, but just refreshing it since we're in here. So I adjusted the echo. The frequency adjustment is up here, and it is VR7, and that is the transmit frequency. And it was 2 kZs off on AM and off on FM. And I know that because when I keyed up, it would show it 2 kZ off on the counter on here. And I know it's not a true frequency counter, but it, you know, it was still reading accurate. And it was showing me the same thing on that radio there. On the Washington, when I would tune it in on the clarifier, it was telling me that that's how far off it was. So to adjust that, I just basically keyed up this radio here while I was watching on the other radio and just tuned the frequency on this to where I knew it was spot on. So I'll get into that in a second. So I'll be right back. Stick with me. Okay, so to make this whole situation work here, you need really one of 2 things: either another working radio that you know is on frequency, or you know, a frequency counter or something. You can get those things pretty cheap now on the eBay, just those little ones that just have a little box with an antenna coming off. Just something simple like that. But it's almost easier if you know, if you've got another radio that's on, or even if you have a friend that's, you know, in your same neighborhood, or somebody that's got a radio that they can turn their radio on. If you're talking about sideband, you're going to have a radio that has the sideband on it if you're going to align it to sideband, obviously. But what you do is you pick a channel on your radio, on your one that you're trying to align, and then you take your radio that you know is good. And you can have an antenna hooked up to both of them. You definitely want to have an antenna hooked up to the one that you're working on and you're transmitting. The other one, you don't really have to have one hooked up. It cleans up the signal a lot to have just any kind of antenna hooked up to it, but it's not absolutely necessary because your signal's going to be enough to, you know, get into your, basically your test radio anyway. So what you're going to do is when you key this radio up and start talking, you're going to see if it sounds like it's on frequency on this radio. And if it's not, then you're going to engage your clarifier on whatever radio it would be. And then you're going to use this radio here to tune in this radio to where it sounds right. And then once it's tuned in on your good radio, then you'll know how far on or off and in what direction your frequency is on this one. So, for example, I've got these on channel 33. I've got the power turned all the way down, so it's almost nothing on this. And I'm just going to be, you know, seeing what it does on this one. 1, 2, 1, 2, check, check. Yeah, that sounds pretty good. That's like pretty much my natural sounding voice on sideband there. It's at 3350. See if I turned it up to 2. 1, 2, 1, 1, 1, 2. See, so I'm as I move the clarifier, you can hear it, you know, taking my voice up and down. So let me grab my glasses here. So I believe that should be, yeah, that's right on where it was. 1, 2, 1, 1. No, where was it? Now I have to see what frequency this radio is on so I can remember where I'm at. 27335. How did I end up on? Okay, there it is, 335. Oh, 3351. There we go. 1, 2, 1, 2. 1, 1, 1, 2. Check, 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 check. Yeah, right there. And I mean, even when you're on 350 to 351, there's still just a tiny little bit of play in there. It might not be on the 0 or on the 1. There's just a tiny little bit in there where you maybe, you know, on or off a little. And once it starts to getting down to splitting hairs like that, that's perfectly fine for a radio like this, because they're going to heat up and drift a little bit anyways, which is why a lot of people don't like them. But you know, they're plenty practical if you know that. And if you are going to have one of these radios that has a tendency to drift a little bit, at least the 6-digit kind of helps you tell where it's drifting a little, because while the 6-digit counter on this might not be a true frequency, you know, counter, it does at least let you know kind of where the radio's, at least how much the radio's, you know, kind of drifting back and forth. So at least you can compensate for it on that. Again, if you want to sit up on sideband and talk to the guys on their ICOMs all day long, you're not going to be very happy with it. But if you just want to chat with your buddies on sideband, or just do a little chatting and shooting some skip and stuff, you know, they're perfectly fine. So once you've got it aligned on there on sideband like that, now to do that, now you wouldn't have been able to tell because I've got the radio turned around. Oh, my poor countertop. Yeah, this isn't going to work right now. You can see that it's 273350, and this one here is 273350, and it sounds okay. It sounds fine. So that's really what you want. To adjust this frequency here, again, it's VR7, and it's pretty much, if you look down here, it's pretty much straight down in there. Let's see if I can see it real quick. Yeah, it's pretty much right behind this, your upper sideband, lower sideband, your mode switch. If you pretty much follow that straight back and go straight down, it's the little variable resistor right straight under there. And what you're going to want to do is you're going to want to take something like this, and you're going to want to put it down in there, and you're kind of going to want to turn it back and forth a little bit. Okay, so anyways, having this flipped around again, you can see it's 273350 and 273350. Now that is on sideband. And so you know that your counter's pretty much lined up and that you're pretty much on frequency. And if you're on frequency, if your transmit frequency is on, and again there's some receive, but if your transmit frequency is on with the sideband, then it's pretty much going to be on with the AM. I mean, when I was keying up, like I said, it was like 2 kZs off. It was showing like, you know, instead of a 0 on the end, it was showing a 2. And I just adjusted this out until it was a 0, which was lining up with this one, and it seemed to be okay. So while these things may be off a little bit, they're not. It didn't seem like it was that bad to get it back in, and that's for the transmit. The receive, it's pretty easy to dial into, and I'll show you that in a second here. Okay, so what I wanted to do here real quick is I just wanted to show, I got both of these things hooked up to an antenna switch, and they're both, even though this one's switched off and this one's switched on, it's still receiving just a little bit. I just wanted to show you how the SuperStar 158 seems to be pretty much on frequency, because as far as the receive on the sideband goes, because it's, you know, the voices are lining up with what's going on with the Washington, and I know it's on, so. Okay, on to some audio alignment instructions here. Now, this is where you are definitely going to need some of these right here. You've got a couple of cans in here that you can use a flat on, but for some of these you're going to need one of these that has this funky tip. So take your time, take a few minutes to find the tip and find the right one that, you know, seats in there right, you know, when you get these things. And take your time to make sure you find the right one, because like I said, you don't want to mess these up. So again, I will try and post a picture of this thing here that's got all the locations on it, but it tells you right where all of them are. Basically, you're going to be looking for L2 through L10, and L2 starts right here. This is L2, this is L3, this is L4. Okay, you don't do L4. You do L2, 3, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, and 10. And again, that's why it's important to read these. L4 is for the FM here. And you may need to adjust that. But for now, we're just going to go with the AM, which is L2, 3, 5, 6, 7, 8, and 10. So again, there's 2, there's 3, and then up here is 5, or wait, no, this one's 5, this one's 6, this one's 7, and then 8, 9, 10. So there you go. You've got 2, 3, 4, which is for the FM, but 2, 3, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Basically what you do is, starting with 2 and going to 10, you either put on some headphones here, put this into your speaker jack in the back. You'll only have one earbud working on here, but that's okay. Or you can use an external speaker, or just the stock one that's in here. That's all you got. But you're going to want to turn up the volume a little bit, and you're also going to be watching the meter on the front of your radio. And you're going to want to start with 2 and go all the way through 10, except for 4. And you're just going to kind of rock them back and forth a little bit. And you're going to watch your meter and listen to it. And wherever you have, you know, the most audio, and wherever your signal is the highest on the meter, that's kind of going to where you want to, be where you want to stop. Now you might want to wiggle it back and forth just a little, maybe maybe the pitch you're getting, or maybe it's a little raspy on the very, very highest, so you might, turn it back just a hair, but, still kind of keep it around that peak. And that's what you're trying to do. Now, I've noticed my experience through aligning radios, and at least in doing this one in this way, was that a couple of these cans here made a little bit of a difference, and I gained a little bit. The rest of them not so much. They were pretty much close to being on. So that's probably will be your experience. You'll probably find one or two where you'll notice a little bit of a difference, and you'll go, oh, and you'll gain some, and then the rest will be probably the same. And then when you're done trimming it out, you'll probably have a little bit of an improved receive. So just as an example here, we'll start off with L2 here, and I'll show you what I'm talking about. Now that one there is one of the larger trim ones, and you don't notice much of a difference. Plus, I've got this thing so trimmed out right now. I've been going over it several times, so it's pretty tuned in there. But that's what you want to do, is you want to start with that one and just kind of rock it back and forth and watch your needle and listen to it. And when it gets to where it's kind of the highest or the best audio, then kind of leave it there. And you'll want to go through them all, maybe 2 or 3 times, and that's really all there is to it. The last two that you're supposed to trim after you've went through all of them and trimmed it is L5 and L6, which is this one here and this one here. These two here are kind of the final ones that you're going to trim after you've went through and done all the other ones. So, but anyways, once again, a good idea to download a copy of this stuff here, and I will try and leave a link or a better description to or some pictures as to where you can get these things at. Like I said, there's some CDs you can get online, and then you can just probably find the manuals here and there. But you really want to have the service manuals to these. Now, one of these other cans back here, some of them take the flats, and then some of them a flat blade, and then some of them take this right here. So again, you want to make sure that you've got the right tool for the right can, and just be very, very careful with it. And also, you can take and put a little bit of a mark on your tool here. So if you put it in there, you can kind of mark it in a way so, at least you can kind of have an idea of where you started and where you're at in case you, get a little bit lost. But you'll only be moving these things back and forth just maybe, a quarter, eighth of a turn each way. And you just kind of go through them all. Like I said, I'm not going to go do all mine because I've already been through these things 2, 3, 4 times and got it where I want it, so I'm not going to mess with it. But that is basically how you do your receive alignment on this. Pretty simple. Really not too much to screw up as long as you stick with the numbers of the cans you're supposed to adjust, and use the right tool, and don't be overly forceful. You should be fine. So next I'm going to move on to do a little segment on the high power, low power modulation settings, and then I'll make a couple of comments about the finals and the driver bias and that stuff over there, and then I'll probably kind of wrap it up. So for that I shall return, so stick with me. Okay, so we're back, and I'm kind of going to go over the modulation and power adjustments in this thing. And again, I'm kind of going over, I guess, what I adjusted or what I feel needed to be adjusted or could have been adjusted. Don't necessarily have to mess with all of this stuff, but so your modulation pot, or your can, or your variable resistor, whatever you want to call it, is VR16, and that's this one right here. And to set your modulation, you really should have an oscilloscope. You can kind of tell when you're tuning around with it, the way that it sounds, when it starts kind of sounding overly raspy. How you have this set kind of interacts with your mic gain and the kind of microphone you're using. A a lot of guys will just come in here and crank this. You know, in the old days they just completely lift the resistor. But the problem with that is then you'd have too much modulation and you'd have to turn the mic gain down, and it could just be kind of, and then sometimes, you know, if you've, depending on your microphone, you know, and with your talkback you can get a squeal, and it just, you can cause a problem just going in there and cranking it like that. So I don't recommend doing that unless you have the proper equipment to check everything, you know, else that you've got in line if you're doing that. Now, from the factory, I'm going to try and zoom in here a little bit on this if I can, just to kind of show you where it's at. Let's see here. Okay. Let me scoot this over just a little bit here. Okay. Now, your variable resistors may be different. They may have like a clear color instead of an orange color, or they may be blue, or I mean, they've changed the colors of these things depending on where they get, you know, the parts from. So I can only really speak to this one and how it's set. This one here, counterclockwise, is the modulation is all the way down. And the flat on this thing is pretty much to the flat of the side here. Maybe just a little bit turned past that, but. So that's all the way down. It came out of the box right about there. Just maybe like an eighth of a turn, just to where this flat is kind of going across that corner right there. That was how it was stock, and I was able to talk to my locals on it, and you know, nobody said anything. The modulation wasn't overly strong, but nobody mentioned or said anything, so it was working that way okay out of the box. I have it right about here, which is about where the flat is kind of going across here. That turns it up a little bit. Now cranked all the way is pretty much with the flat over to the other side of the can here. But I did want to show you, you can kind of hear it with the talkback on when it starts getting a little bit too raspy. Let's see here. I can do this here. 1 2, check check, audio, 1 1 1 2. That's all the way up, down, backing it down to the middle there. Audio, kind of in the corner there. Audio, 1 2 1 2 1 2 1 2 1 2. So you can kind of hear when it's, you know, cranked all the way over, it's, you know, getting pretty raspy. And then as you crank it back down, it almost sounds like it completely falls off right here, but it doesn't. It just starts to smooth out and kind of lose the overmodulation and the raspiness. So probably for me, right around here, maybe turn just a little bit more to where this flat is kind of, you know, across this corner here. That's probably about the max that I would have it, at least for the way that I have it set up. As I said before, if you've got an O-scope and the right tools, and you know, if you know how to do all this kind of stuff, and you've got everything tuned to work with everything right, you know, your mic gain, your microphone, and your modulation, and any other kind of mod you might have, then that's one thing. But for a, you know, pretty much stock out of the box radio, that's kind of how they come stock. That's kind of how you you know, can set it without having any kind of equipment, and kind of get a good idea. And for those of you that are like, no, don't tell people, you know what, most guys just go in here and crank that thing. So I'm actually telling people, you know, look, you can kind of turn it up a little bit, but don't crank it all the way, because then you'll be splattering. So I'm actually I'm actually doing a good thing by telling people to turn it up a little way and kind of check it with your talkback, as opposed to just maxing it out and turning it all the way. And if you have an oscilloscope, when you start turning it up like that, you can see it start to flat top. So I think I got a cheap oscilloscope here. I'll hook it up here in a second, and I'll show you what I'm talking about. Stick with me. Okay, there's my El Cheapo $100 ancient oscilloscope, but it works pretty good. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to turn the modulation all the way down, and then just to slowly turn it up, and you'll see on there how it goes from you know, round flat top. It's all the way down now. Audio 1 2 1 2 3 1 2 1 2 1 2 audio up 1 2 1 2 1 2 1 2 1 2 1 2 1 2, and then back down to where I have it. It kind of starts to mellow out again a little bit. So, and again, if you shop, you probably, if you could find someone that's got one local, it'd be best, because sometimes you're taking a risk buying stuff online. There are some electronics places online that are known for doing really good business, but good place to get stuff like oscilloscopes. These older ones, usually you can get them for, $75, $100, depending on the range. You want to get one that's the 0 to 30 megahertz, because that's the range of, you're going to be using for 10, 11, or 12 meter radios. But you can also get newer digital oscilloscopes pretty cheap too, and pretty much whatever you can get these days, will work well enough for this kind of stuff. Even the El Cheapo stuff works halfway decent. So, anyways, there you go. Little tutorial on your modulation there. Okay, so now we're going to talk about the power section here for just a minute. And so, excuse me, probably take me a day to do a recap here. So far, the first thing we did was we adjusted the echo there, and then we talked about aligning the transmit frequency with the VR7 up here, and we were doing that with the other radio. Then we showed how to do the receive alignment, and then we showed the modulation. Oh, wait a minute, which one was the modulation? Maybe it was this one here. And that's the other thing too, you have to look at these really close. It's real easy to be working on the radio, and you've got it on the right one, and then you look away and take your hand out and put it back in and put it on the wrong one. You really got to pay attention. Let's see. Yeah, VR16. So that's this one here. The VR16 was the modulation pod. Again, I'll try and put a picture of this thing up. This, by the way, is Radio Mods E.P.T 6910Z. Again, this board's a 6911D, but this is the only thing I could find instructions for. And this is www.radiomods.co.nz EPT 6900.html. Sorry to bore you with all that, but that's where I got this and printed it out. So, like I said, this has been accurate. An accurate legend as far as all these variable resistors are concerned. So again, I'll try and post a picture of that up there. So then we did that modulation, and now we're down to the power. So VR14, which is this one right here, that is your AM FM high power. So the only thing I don't like about these radios, they do not have an independent high power for the AM and the FM. Some radios do, but this one doesn't. AM FM high power is VR14, and your AM FM low power, which is VR18, which is right under VR16, the modulation pot is VR18. That is your AM and FM low power. So VR16 modulation, VR14 AM FM high power, VR18 AM FM low power. Now, an interesting word about the power system on these radios and export radios in general. I've got an old Galaxy DX66 that's the same way. A lot of these radios with the variable power. And this is kind of how they work. You've got your variable power knob here. You got your low and then your high. And then inside here you got your low and your high. You can't really crank the low one down all the way low and have like a half a watt dead key, and then crank the high one up all the way and then have like full swing of the radio. They just don't work that way. It's kind of like a rubber band. Like if you max the high out, then you're going to have a higher dead key. Like if you turn the high one all the way up, you're going to have like a 6, 7, 8 watt dead key or something. And if you want your dead key to be down to where it's like, 1, 2 watts or, something like that, then, if say the radio had a max of like, 45 watts, then you're probably going to only have a max of like maybe 38 watts, 40 watts. It's not a big deal. It's why they do aftermarket mods and put swing kits and stuff in there, so you can kind of have a really low dead key and then have the radio swing, all the way to its full power. But these are not like that from the factory, and I'll kind of show you what I'm talking about. So there you got the power there, and again, that's not a peak reading power meter. It's just for dead keys, just an average reading, but that's good enough for what I'm doing here. So what I'm going to show you is, you've got the let's see here. Okay, this is VR14. This is the AM/FM high power, and it's cranked all the way up. And this is the AM/FM low power, and it's turned all the way down. All right. And then the knob up here for the low power is turned all the way down. I key it up. I got like a 10 watt dead key. Well, why is that? Well, it's because it's, like I said, it's kind of a rubber band effect. Now I'll start to turn this power, I'll start to turn the high power down a little bit, and you'll see what happens. See, I just started turning it down a little bit, and it dropped all the way down. And like I said, that's because there's kind of a parameter there. It's kind of a rubber band effect. It's almost kind of like this. And if you pull it this way, it's going to kind of go that way a little bit on one end. And if you pull it that way, it's kind of going to go that way, on the other end. So that's how it's set up. It's really not a big deal. You don't need these things to be screaming their guts out high power anyways. I mean, if you only get 35 watts out of it instead of 45 or 50, that's, no big deal anyways. I think you'll get more than that out of it. I've got a really super stingy meter that's a peak reader, and it's only saying that, maybe putting out like 30, 35 watts, but it's a very, very, very stingy reader. It reads almost 10 to 15 watts low consistently on a peak, because like I said, it does have a peak reader on it, but it's more of a average meter. It's one of those Daiwa cross needle meters, and so it is a very stingy meter on it. So but again, what you want to do with this is you're just kind of going to want to figure out where you want your dead key. If you've got your AM/FM low power all the way down, then you got your high power, and figure out what you want your minimum dead key to be when it's rolled all the way down. Because a lot of guys, like maybe you're going to run an amp or something, and you want it 2 watts, but you don't want to have to turn it up and dial it at 2 watts, because then you could bump the knob. You just want to have it so the knob's turned all the way down or halfway. Some point that it's easy to turn it to and reference it. It's not hard to find, and you don't have to adjust it every time you turn on your amplifier, if that makes any sense. So anyways, with that, let's see what we can do here. Okay, so I got it set to where it's about a 2 watt dead key on all the way down. And then let's see, if I turn it up to about halfway, 6, all the way up, 8, and yeah, it'll probably go to 35 or 40, even though it's supposedly 45 or 50 watt. But again, you don't necessarily need it to scream. If you just crank everything all the way up, then yeah, sure. But there's absolutely no gain at all to be made from any of these radios getting an extra 5 or 10 watts out of them. It's just not. Whatever the radio's rated for, keep it around there or down a little bit, and they'll live a lot happier lives. But anyways, I just kind of wanted to show you that that's just kind of how the it's just kind of how the power settings on these things work. You really only need to get in here, and you can get in here and mess around with it, but you're mostly just kind of going to be setting it where you want your, if you're going to run an amplifier, or kind of where you want your, power to be when it's turned all the way down. And then, if you're running an amp, you may be running something smaller and you want to turn your top end down, Anyways, so, and it's the same thing too with FM. Although FM is usually going to be the same as AM and FM, I have had some radios where the FM is for some reason off a little bit, and so if you switch to FM and you're running an amplifier, you have to readjust your dead key because there's enough of a difference between the two that if you're running an amplifier, you understand what I'm saying. And that's something, if you do run an amplifier, always check your dead keys between AM, FM, because they can be different. Some radios have different adjustments in here for them, and then also some radios are just not exactly the same, so you beware of that. Okay, so yeah, I think that's pretty much covered everything. Sorry to kind of prattle on about all this stuff, but you know, it's kind of important, and it's you know, it's why you're watching the videos, to learn this kind of stuff. So as far as the power adjustments go, you know, mine were okay stock. They weren't, sometimes they're really jacked up stock, like the dead keys are really, you know, jacked up too high and all that, but that wasn't the case with this one. So this one would have been, you know, pretty safe to talk on, you know, out of the box, so as far as that goes. So, but you should get yourself a cheap power meter. If nothing else, you can at least set your dead keys, you know, and you can at least kind of tell when you're turning your top end down a little bit. That way it's, you know, when it's not maxed out. So you don't have to have a lot of fancy stuff, just you know, a little bit of cheap stuff to kind of help you with the little stuff, and that's good enough. So okay, I got a couple more little projects here with this radio, and then I'm going to wrap up this video. So that was the high and low power adjustment. So stick with me. Okay, and real quick, I wanted to have a conversation about these guys back here. These are your final bias and driver bias variable resistors. They are VR12 is the driver bias, and VR10 and VR11 are the final bias. You really don't want to mess with those. You certainly don't want to crank them up and max them out. That's not good, because you know, you don't want to blow up your finals. You don't want to overdrive these. You don't want to, you know, you want this stuff to be happy in here for sure. And I would also recommend getting any kind of external cooling fan or making your own or whatever for these heat sinks, because these radios do, you know, have a tendency to get warm, and you're really gonna, you know, add a lot of life if you can keep this heat sink cool. But to get back to these, outside of having a spectrum analyzer and some other stuff, there are a couple of test points on here, and you can simply measure the voltage of these and adjust them. So it's actually not that hard to do, you know, in the basic way. Which again, you need a multimeter that reads in millivolts, I believe. Really, what you need, if you hold on for just a second here. Is something like this. This is, I should do a video on this thing. I might just do that. This is a multimeter, and it is also a dead battery multimeter. Wish I could turn this damn thing on. But anyways, this is an oscilloscope and a multimeter. So you have something like this, and you know what you're doing. You can check your modulation on this, because like I said, it is an oscilloscope, and you can check, you know, some of the other things in your radio here that you need to check. So, and you can get these things. This is a Handtech 2C42 handheld oscilloscope there. And you can get stuff like these used for around $75, $100. They're new. They're probably a couple $100 maybe. I don't know. They've got some different trims and different models of them, you know, that do some different stuff. This one's, you know, an older one, but that is something that you could get and, you know, check your modulation with, and also check your final bias and your driver bias, because again, you can check those. If you have a spectrum analyzer, you can check them. But the most common way is, you know, by voltage. There's a couple of test points in here that you put the multimeter on. It tells you the voltage, and then you adjust these things according to the voltage. Some people say it's better to do it by a spectrum analyzer, and it probably is, but that's neither here nor there. Again, I just kind of wanted to go over these real quick. Just basically something you don't really want to mess with at all unless you've you know, got one of those two tools and kind of know what you're doing. As far as how these things come from the factory, usually from the factory, I think they're usually okay, probably a little on the conservative side, you know, which is good because they don't want these things blowing up all the time. So, and that's another reason to not, you know, keep everything over here maxed out, is try and keep all this stuff happy. So, anyways, that's the little bit on the final and the driver bias adjustments there. So. You couldn't have it straight up and down or it was off, you know, around 2 or 3. So to zero this thing in, now if it's way off, you need to check your regular clarifier, because even just kind of rocking this thing, I don't know if you can see the display on here, if I can move it back a little bit. Where are we here? But the clarifier on here, it's very sensitive, and so if this top one's maybe not quite lining up a little bit, sometimes you can rock this bottom one because it's coarse, and sometimes you can rock it a little bit, and to kind of help get this one here zeroed, you know, it can be a little bit of a shat show between these two things, and then sometimes it'll drift a little. That's why I say some guys, it just they got too much OCD to sit there and either see it off a number or, you know, see it moving around. But to kind of line up your clarifier, assuming everything's working okay, like I said, look, I'm just kind of moving this back and forth from one side of the stop to the other, and it's, you know, so if this thing is off a few, don't freak out. If you don't mind it being off a few, it still works perfectly fine. If you don't mind it being off a few, just leave it alone. If it's off a whole bunch, more than like 3 or 4, or, you know, then you've got another issue somewhere else. But if it's just off, you know, 2, 3, whatever, there is an adjustment in here called VC1, and it will adjust this. And you really only want to screw around with that if you are pretty for sure that, you know, you're on frequency and where you want to be. Otherwise, you would maybe have to go back and do it again at a later time if you had it, you know, realigned or whatever. You know, when you put the cover on, when it heats up and this and that, but you know, it doesn't bother me. I've been listening to this thing, you know, all week long. It's been on for the last 3 or 4 days straight. Haven't turned it off, and you know, it's been keeping up pretty good with the Washington there. So I really can't complain about that. So all right, so with that, I'm going to pause it real quick. I'm going to come back and kind of give you a general overview of what you just kind of need to go over and look over when you get one of these. You know, like I said, if you buy one of these from someplace and it's a halfway reputable place, they'll go through and do all this stuff for you. They'll check everything out. They'll tune it all. They'll do all this stuff, and you won't have to worry about it. But like I said, if you come across one of these and, you know, don't have a tech or a shop nearby, or they're all busy, or, you know, whatever, and you need to get it going and want to have it, you know, reasonably clean and working halfway decent, then you know, you can try and get her done this way. So with that, I'll be right back. Stick with me. Okay. Yeah, a couple more things. Sorry the video is so long, but I wanted to be thorough, and, you know, I really was not. I'm not trying to make this a tutorial on how to you know, peak and tune or align a radio or anything. I just kind of wanted it to be specific to this radio here, or at least this board here. And as I stated before, just for people that, you know, can't get it to a shop, can't find some place to do it or whatever, or you've got one of these or something similar laying around, you know, better than nothing, right? So one last couple things here. The one thing you really want to do when you kind of get these radios is just look it over really well inside. You've got a lot of these little plugs here, like this here. You know, check these. You've got little plugs here, little plug there. You've got a bunch of them, you know, on the board. There's some up under here. There's some up under here. You know, you get a few too that have some blank spots where they've had something unplugged from one area and plugged into another. You know, so I mean, there's times I've looked in these radios and you might just see something completely unplugged, or maybe it's half unplugged. So, you know, like I said, just go around and check all these and just make sure it looks like they're plugged in properly. After I switched the jumpers here, because I had been back in here and pushed the jumper down and had my fingers in here, one of these wires that this little cluster of wires right here is all part of the dimmer system for the display. And after I'd got done converting it, I noticed that just the frequency counter lights were dimmer, but everything else was bright. And I was like, well, what the heck? And so I started looking around. And one of these little plugs, not this one here, but one of these other little plugs had pulled out of there. And that's why it was dimmer than the rest of the lights, because this is kind of the hub here where all of the lights go, and then it gets voltage. And then it gets voltage, you know, up and down depending on the dimmer module. And so with that, I'd like to get to the dimmer situation. This here is unplugged because it unplugs the dimmer thing and leaves it kind of dim. I noticed just sitting there, it was just too bright, and it just, I wished I could dim it down, and you really can't unless you put something over this little, you know, this little dimmer window up here. So I didn't really want to feel like doing that, and so that when that plug came undone and dimmed the one set of lights there, I thought, and so I just kind of kept unplugging these and plugging them in to see, and so I found out that this particular plug here, it's a, let me look real quick here. Let me see if I can zoom in a little bit here. It's a red, brown, and black, and it's kind of this top. It's really, all the rest of these are sort of in a row here, and this one's at an angle. And like I said, that one basically gives you the power or whatever from the dimmer. But if you, I'll show you here. Okay. Okay. So again, this is the dimmer with it, you know how it is, and if you put your finger over that, it kind of dims it down, and that's not so bad. But like that, it was just a little bit too much. So if you just take and unplug that wire that I showed you there, then that drops it down and dims it down, and that's fairly pleasant there, so that I can deal with. The only thing I didn't really like about it is I felt that that was too bright. There's probably a way you could put some type of a variable resistor or something in here where you could control all that a little bit better. That would sort of be nice if they had a way that you could sort of adjust that, you know, adjust the brightness a little bit of it. You know, it would dim and do whatever, but you could at least kind of adjust the brightness. But so anyways, that's the dimmer mod, and if you feel like it's just too bright and you don't want to deal with it dimming and doing all that crap, just unplug this one top plug here. Like I said, all the rest of these are in a row, and that one here is just kind of angle on the side there, and it's the one with the red, the brown, and the black. So just unplug that, and that just leaves it permanently on the dim there. So yeah, with that, I think that's pretty much it. Like I said, just, you know, kind of look everything over. Also, I noticed on these things here, you know, some of the work on these, whoa, Almost went for a sailboat ride there. Didn't have my knobs in. Be careful doing that. I also noticed here, if you can see, before I drive it off the road, the way they got these finals in here is a little sloppy. This pad behind this one's a little crooked. It could use to be straightened out. And this final, they got it in there just a little bit crooked. But that's, you know, that's kind of what's going to happen, you know, when you get the Arranger RCI, that kind of stuff. They don't have the quality control of the anytones and all that. And, you know, there's no secret about that. But they're still really good radios, and you know, if you enjoy the older stuff and it's something you can tinker with a little bit easily. I mean, like I said, those other radios are great. You're probably never going to have problems with them. You're probably going to have way more problems with these, but these are a little less disposable, I think, than some of the newer ones that are all surface mount. So, and it's something a little bit different. I mean, you know, if you get kind of tired of looking at, you know, strikers all day long and you want something a little bit different and something a little more vintage, there you go. These radios are kind of along the lines of sort of the styling of the old Galaxies and the, you know, the 148Fs and some of those kind of radios, you know. So, anyways, with that, I'm going to clean up this mess and come back and close it out real quick. So, stick with me. Alright, well, I think that about wraps it up for this video. Again, I know it's kind of a long video, but there's really no quick way to do this, and you know, I'm not holding a gun to anybody who's had to watch these videos. So if you've got one of these radios or you're thinking of getting one and you want to geek out and watch some of this stuff, you know, there's some information here for you. And again, this information should apply to the 69 base and the VHP 69 RCI 69 VHP mobile. Those have some differences in them, but for the most part the boards are pretty similar. But if you've got any of those three radios, just go to that cbtricks.org and type in the model of your radio, and you should be able to get a PDF manual that you can print out. That's what I did here, and again, it's cbtricks.org, and this is for the EDX, which was the radio without the variable dimmer control, but otherwise it's the same radio, the board's the same, whatever. The LEDs on this one are white. The older model was blue and didn't have the dimmer, but other than that, it's the same radio. So if you see it listed as the EDX instead of the VDX, that's what the deal is there. They may have one for the VDX too. It's been out a little bit. It hasn't been out as long, so there might not be a PDF on it yet. I'm not sure. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to take the camera and I'm going to go through. It's easier to take the camera and take some video of these pages than it is to take still pictures. So I'm going to take a few pictures of or some video of some of these pages here with some of the information, just so if you haven't been able to find a manual or can't, you know, maybe your computer's not working, maybe your printer took a crap, I don't know, but I'll video some of these pages here with the variable resistor locations and some of that, so stick with me. Alright, so I'm just going to start by taking this cover page off and going through some of these pages. Again, model SS158 EDX-B, which I think means it's the blue LEDs on there. But that gives you the basic transmitter specs and information there. There's just some basic usage instructions there. And this is a circuit description here. Again, I don't know how well you can see some of this, so. This is some alignment instructions here. All right, another page there. We got a couple stuck together here. And then I've got another separate paper that's got the variable resistors kind of separated. But like I said, this manual, it shows you what test equipment you'll need, shows you how to hook it up. And then it gives you the, pretty much everything. It's a service manual, so that's all the locations there. And then, of course, it gives you the, you know, circuit board layouts. And your board layout. And then the other side of the board. So there's more pages that I haven't even copied. This is just the basic stuff, but again, get yourself one of these, download one of those. And then for the variable resistors locations that seem to work for this radio, so there you go. All right. Thanks for watching. Shane, Gemini Garage.